Testing, 1, 2. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming out. My name is Geoff Zakaib. I'm the chapter lead here in Calgary for Data for Good, and I also serve on the national board of directors of Data for Good. So here's our plan for the evening. I'll be kicking off with a little bit of background. We're thrilled to have Councillor Kourtney Penner here to send some greetings from the city of Calgary. Terry Rock, who's the president and CEO of Platform Calgary, has done a lot of work in the social innovation area as well as technology innovation. He's going to give us a few words from his perspective. And then we're going to roll into a year-by-year review of Data for Good. Going fairly quickly, but we have a lot of other speakers who I'll introduce later to talk to you about their experiences. We'll have a time of networking and celebration after that. Whoa. that was very scary. First of all, our land acknowledgement. So, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge living on the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, Kainai First Nations, Tsuut'ina First Nation, Stoney Nakoda, the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Good Stoney. And the city of Calgary is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, districts 5 and 6. So some of you may be new to Data for Good. So before going into all of the history, I wanted to give a bit of a synopsis so you catch on to what we're actually about and what we're talking about. So Data for Good, we are a volunteer group of passionate and socially minded folks using our technical knowledge and skills for social good. Our goal is to help nonprofit and social organizations harness the power of their data and analytics for positive social impact in the community. So the Calgary chapter is one of 9 chapters across Canada, from Vancouver all the way to the Maritimes. In Calgary, we started in November 2013, thus our 10-year anniversary, very close by. And we've grown amazingly to over 3,100 members on Meetup. And we are by far, not by far, but we are the biggest chapter in Canada. Even Toronto is less than 3,000, right? So there you go. We work in like three different ways, which you'll hear about tonight. So our signature event is something called a Datathon. It's like a hackathon, but we use data. And we partner with nonprofit social organizations that have a lot of data months in advance to help pull that data into an analytic environment, come up with challenges, and then have 100+ volunteers over the course of a weekend analyzing and visualizing all of that data. For some organizations, they don't have as much data or they're not quite ready for a datathon, so we have what we call our partner projects, and you'll hear about a few of those. They're smaller scale, introduce a nonprofit to our volunteers, they spin up a team, go away and do some work for a few weeks or a few months, that sort of thing. And then new is our micro projects, where you come up with the idea of your project at one of our meetups, pitch it, form a team, and then go away and do it, and then come back and report on it. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great way for you to get involved with Data for Good. And we have our monthly meetups, like today on the 4th Thursday of the month. And our meetup site, our website, that link will take you to our QR code will take you to our meetup site. All right, so into the program, and so Kourtney, you are our first special guest, so welcome. We're thrilled to have you here.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Building off the land acknowledgement, our city's land acknowledgement, we talk about the fact that we're at the confluence of the Bow and Elbow rivers, and we talk about the confluence being that natural meeting spot in the sharing of ideas and stories and of resources. And I can't think about a story, or something that really resonates, like as close to Data for Good, where you combine these things to make great change in our community. I was so really honored when Geoff asked me to come and speak today. And part of that is Data for Good combines these passionate, love stories that I have about Calgary and what I believe to be true about Calgary. So one, I believe that we're a super entrepreneurial city, which means we have great ideas. Two, I believe that we have some of the most amazing people who are giving of their time and their talent and their resources. Three, I believe that we have a social services sector who cares deeply and is empathetic and kind and wants to serve the best for our citizenry across all ages and stages of their lives. And then you mash that all up into Data for Good. And I was like, wow, this is all the warm fuzzies. So I hope you get some warm fuzzies from the stories tonight. I'm so glad to be here today. So my story into tech is one of my very, very first tech events actually was Civic Tech YWCA. And I went because I was curious about how tech could support my community association. I saw an opportunity for tech to be involved in social enterprise, at the community, at the nonprofit level, and I really wanted to dig in. And I met amazing people there who've also gone on to do some really, really cool things. I met Alice Lam there. I think I actually went to go purposely seek out Alice Lam to nerd out with her. But I remember ideas about things like putting cameras on community associations so people could figure out where the best ice was at any given day or what was the busiest pickup game of hockey. And we haven't implemented that yet, but we'll get there, right? Someone will cycle back to that. But then I had people I was talking about, and then I had people introduce me to Rainforest Alberta. So probably many of you are familiar with Rainforest Alberta. I see some, hi Art. I see familiar faces from that. And I became enamored with this community that, again, showed the best of Calgary. And they opened their arms on a weekly basis, whether you'd been in the city for 1 hour, 1 day, a month, a year, to say, yeah, let's help you grow and build something. And I went on to become a community manager there while also working. Working there, I did some work with Beakerhead, and I was still volunteering with my community. And that was my path to becoming a city councillor. And it was actually, again, combining so many of the things that are happening in Data for Good. So now in my city council role, what I'm really passionate about and what I really want to support and see succeed is our nonprofit sector. So I sit on family community support services to make sure that we're supporting preventative care. I've been really involved in the housing strategy. I was the chair of the community development committee, and I really want to make sure that so much of the work that all of you are doing gets amplified. Similarly with tech, there's lots of great stories coming out of tech. I don't think we're shouting at the rooftops enough. So I actually just sat down with Terry earlier today, happenstance, and made a commitment to lean back into tech. So that was also why it was so great here. To lean back into tech to help tell that story and to help be a champion in the city for tech that it's happening. I love Data for Good, and I love the work that's happening here because by nature, nonprofits are ultra entrepreneurial. They have scarce resources, and they will make the best of it, and they will stretch those dollars as far as they can, and they will adapt and adopt any innovation that comes their way in order to deliver to people, because at the end of the day, it's all about people. So to the nonprofit sector who is here tonight and you are going to speak, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for the work that you're doing, serving Calgarians. I'm so appreciative of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To the volunteers, if you're new or you're going to jump on a project today, they can't do it without you. They can't do it without your ideas, your time, your talent. So thank you to all of you for that spirit of giving. You make our city a better place. And I'm so proud that you're here and doing that. And I, from myself, on behalf of my council colleagues, I have no ability to proclaim this Data for Good Day, but we will anyways, just for fun. I proclaim today Data for Good Day, and I am looking forward to hearing the stories tonight. Am I introducing Terry? You're going to? No, you get to. Thanks, Geoff.
Thank you so much, Kourtney. That's great. Great to see you again as well. So our next speaker is Terry Rock. I gave a brief intro already, but I'll let Terry give a bit more background if necessary, but jump into what you're going to tell us about tonight. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Geoff. Well, how many of you, is this your first time at Platform? So welcome to Calgary's Home for Innovators. This is a place that we built specifically to gather people like you, and I say, fellow nerds, I come in peace. I was in, I'm going to say, 2008-ish, maybe 7, maybe 6. I was leading Calgary Arts Development Authority, which had pulled together a bunch of resources to do a better job of supporting the arts in our city. And we had this grant program for individual artists, and I'm going to just track my time because I love talking about this stuff. And I don't know the exact numbers, but let's say that we had $100,000 to give away, and we got 100 applications. And of those 100 applications, 30 of them we had money to fund, but 50 of them met some criteria that they were fundable. And I watched us work hard to figure that out, and then treat the 20 that were fundable like they were the 50 that weren't fundable, and just say goodbye. And I thought, that is such a waste. Like, we just did all this work, all this analysis, have all this data, and we completely flushed it. And we were the only people that knew this, that had the comparator set, that had the ability to make this judgment, and we did nothing about it. And so I came up with this concept called Micro Medici. The Medicis were funding the arts. And Kiva was out at the time, which was doing micro granting for community development around the world. This was pre-Kickstarter. And a local software company worked with us to try to do something about it, and then they folded, and the project went away, and Kickstarter launched a year later, and that's why I'm leading a nonprofit right now. Just kidding. What I'm saying is that anything that we're doing, data is important, and our community and the people that are building our community are important for us to focus on, and there's ways we can do that are better than the ways we're doing it now. One of the things Geoff asked me to talk about is in 2015, I was asked to create post-Calgary Arts Development. I left that in 2013, and in 2015, I worked with the social innovation community to do some research, and I ultimately created a report called Accelerating Alberta's Social Innovation Ecosystem. It resulted in the creation of ABSI, Alberta Social Innovation Connect, which is recently connected with Alberta Seed, AB Seed, to really pull that stuff together. And I had the opportunity to go around in the community and talk to people about social innovation. At the time, it was just when then Premier Dave Hancock had created a $1 billion fund to really focus on R&D in the social sector. That, as soon as Premier Prentice took on, they said, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. They were carving some money out. They had a policy disagreement. The fund went away, but the community was jazzed. What can we do to tackle our most difficult societal problems in different ways, and can we get R&D? So I went around the community, and I had these observations 8 or 9 years ago. First of all, the social innovation community was fragmented. There was a lot going on in Edmonton, in Calgary, in rural Alberta, in universities. Each of those nodes was separate. We actually did a network map, and you could see that there was a cluster in Calgary, there was a cluster in Edmonton, a couple of connections between the cities, universities on the periphery, rural on the periphery. Social innovation was seen by corporate funders as a term you use to make your proposal to them sexier, more likely to get funded. There was a lot of activity across the province. Alberta is a place where we are trying to help our neighbors out through innovative ways of doing it. And there was clear areas of excellence that we needed to celebrate and double down on. There was a lot of discrepancy in understanding what this was, which made it seem like a fad, and the community, in my observation, liked to get around and talk about what it is we're doing anyway. Spent a lot of time just talking about what is innovation. And ultimately, there was a desire that Alberta could be a place where we actually do innovate and tackle these societal problems in new ways. And I think, looking back, there's been some progress, and I think this is a good example of a community that is ready to go after that. And it is still fundamentally important that we do that. So this, I believe, all innovation is social innovation. You don't get the benefit of a technology or something new if people don't change their behavior. That's a straight up thing. I think I stole that from Seth Godin. And I just believe that that is a really important way to frame what we're doing here. And here's a place that last year worked with over 700 startup founders in our programs. It's a really important ethical framework for the kinds of things we do to imagine that when we're innovating, we are creating social change. We may not know what we're unleashing, and this is part of the downside of really trying to grow a tech sector. You need that ethical framework. I saw Geoff Hinton speak at Collision this year in Toronto, and he talked about AI, and he's on the side of like shut it down, pause it. And what he was talking about, which I thought was very interesting, is that artificial intelligence research and commercialization is focusing on either offense, let's take advantage of it, let's like do all kinds of cool things with artificial intelligence, or defense, trying to prevent bad things from happening. And he made a really interesting observation is we need more people to be playing offense against the bad guys. We need to actually use our power to create technology to go after the bad actors. And not enough people are doing that. Everybody's playing defense, they're not playing offense on that side. That, to me, that's a little meta. That's actually data for good by going after the bad, but it's in there somewhere. It's like technology solving problems technology created. What I think we're here to do today is think about and celebrate how we can go after what I think of as our most admired problems in our communities. An admired problem, in my way of thinking, is something that we can have a meeting about and talk about and talk about and talk about, and we have another meeting and talk about, but nobody actually takes a tangible step that's going to make a difference. And we have a lot of these, a lot of endemic problems that are highly admired, and we have all the facets of what the problem is, but it's hard to get a complex system to change to tackle it. Here, we spend a lot of time with people who are innovators who have a great idea. They have a technology, they have something they can do. And the biggest challenge that we put to them is to talk to people who are going to use it, whose problems you're actually going to solve. A lot of technical people don't like talking to people about what their baby might or might not be able to do, and they shy away from it. You've got to go and talk to people who are going to be affected, impacted by what you're doing, and learn from them how they can do it. But the other side of that coin is, we've tried to work with the city of Calgary on innovation challenges. Their biggest problem is they can't tell you what their problem is. And there's a lot of reasons why they can't tell that. They are incented not to show weakness, to have budgets removed, to have all of these things that could come. The system incents people to not talk about how we can do things better. So here we are, data for good. This is the challenge to everyone in this room. Help our city, our community, our society understand what's really going on. Do that work. Go deep. Understand the dynamics of what's holding us back, and help us solve some of our most difficult challenges. The organizations that we're going to hear from today are on the front line of doing that. How can we help them get more insight into what's going on so that they can make a difference? Move beyond admiring the problems into action. Make a difference. Innovators and entrepreneurs, impact-driven, profit-driven, get to know your customer, your users, iterate, and move on things that hold us back. We don't want to be confined. We don't want to confine the problems to things like corporate structures, for-profit, not-for-profit, co-op, who cares? Every tool in our toolbox should be trained on these problems. And I believe fundamentally at the core of getting at this stuff is people like you. There are innovators, there's entrepreneurs, there's technically talented people who have what it takes to make it happen through vehicles like this. So if all innovation is social innovation, then every tech entrepreneur, every techie has a social purpose. And I think we have more in common, whether we're non-for-profit, for-profit, hobbyists, or pros, we're all in this together. So Geoff and everyone with Data for Good, I want to say thank you for being this connective tissue, for bringing us together. Thank you for doing what you do for the community. Congratulations on 10 years, and we look forward to so many more. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. That was just a great message. So we're going to jump now into a stroll down memory lane. So some of you I know have been with us for a long time and some for a short time, but you're going to see, I think, and I hope, a lot of interesting stories, maybe some familiar faces, and see some of the projects you might have been involved with. So it starts in the 2012, 2013 timeframe. And in that time frame, remember that 2013 was the flood, right? So think back. Like it's a long time ago when we had the flood in Calgary. In any case, I was working away and thinking about a couple of my passions. One being data and technology and emerging insights that technology can bring. The other passion being the nonprofit and social sector and the great work that's being done in Calgary by organizations. And I happened to come across, I'm not sure how, probably just cruising on the internet, came across an organization called Data Without Borders. So this was in New York City. A fellow by the name of Jake Porway started this organization called Data Without Borders. It actually morphed into what's now known as DataKind, which is a huge organization. Datakind.org is the website. It's a fantastic example of using data for social good. So I actually called these guys up in New York and I said, I want to start a chapter of Data Without Borders in Calgary. And they said, where? Calgary? Where's that? Oh, it's in Canada. Oh, Canada. Well, sorry, we don't do anything outside of the US right now. But you know what? Just a few weeks ago, a month or so, we got a call from a couple folks in Toronto who had the exact same question. They wanted to start a chapter in Toronto. And they said, well, give me their names. All their names were Joy Robson and Victor Andrew. And they had started Data for Good, the first chapter of Data for Good in Toronto. So long story short, we got together and formed the national organization, and we launched the Calgary chapter in November of 2013. And that's a picture from our first kickoff meeting, which I think was in December of 2013. We had 18 people at that first meeting. 2014, we continued early in the year for some planning and strategy session. Okay, what do we want to be? What do we want to be doing? We had our first datathon, which we're going to hear about in a minute, with the Commuter Challenge. And then we started our kind of regular monthly meetups, or every second month with meetups. And I'm not going to go through these on each slide, but just take a brief look. But some of the topics, really interesting speakers that we were having. So first datathon, it was interesting. What is a datathon? How do we want to run it? We had a great partner with Commuter Challenge, and Kathryn is here to tell us all about it. This down button is actually the
Thanks, Geoff. That's great. So yeah, I was pretty excited to get involved in Data for Good. So my background is I'm an engineering technologist, and I quit the corporate sector in '97, and I was an avid cyclist, and I love data and software. And so anyway, I started the program Commuter Challenge. Actually, I kind of took it over and then kept growing it. And over the years, we collected, actually it started in 2000, and we collect data all kinds of different ways, but in 2011, we actually had a really solid piece of software and database, so we started collecting data, and we had tons and tons of good commuter data, and we had all these ideas of what we could use it for, and it just sat there, and we used it for fundraising and stuff, but then we heard about Data for Good, and so we participated in the first Data for Good, and it was pretty great. So our motivation was to put together some information so we could present it to council and impress on the councillors that there were indeed many cyclists in their neighborhoods, because typically cyclists are on the pathways, and if you're driving to work, you never see them. And we wanted to let them know, because our Commuter Challenge is a corporate competition, so we had companies collecting data of their staff, and companies totally support cyclists and locker rooms and secure bike lockers and all that stuff. So they were really in favor of more pathways. So we were able to create a lot of visualizations that would impress the councillors, so they could see that a lot of cyclists were actually indeed in their wards. So we presented at one of the Transportation Council meetings, and I felt it was very impactful, because we had visualizations, because throwing numbers at them doesn't help too much, but the images do, and they were saying, can you go back to that map? We really need to see that map. Yeah, so it was really great. So so the value that we got, it was great, because we could take our years and years of data collection and actually influence some decision making at the City Hall. As much as other people were speaking about, well, we want to ride our bikes, and it was very emotional, and we showed up with some facts and figures. So influence policy, also we were able to collect our data, and then it helps us fundraise some more and impact change, and of course it just having great facts and figures allowed us to mostly for more fundraising in the future. So yeah, it was really great experience. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so now we're at 2015, and had some meetups on visualization and using analytic tools, and had an interesting one with the public library. Visualization, that's actually the visualization studio up at the University of Calgary. Did you know they had a visualization? It's huge, the screen covers a whole wall. It's just amazing. John Brose is a member of Data for Good, has been one of our core members. He runs the visualization studio. So if you have some really cool stuff, you want to see what it looks like, if you want to get some insights, it's really interesting. One of our signature events, though, in 2015 was our second Datathon with Distress Center Calgary. And we're very happy to have Robyn here this evening to tell us a little bit about it.
Awesome, thanks, Geoff. It's I was reading our retrospective report, getting prepared for this, because I was at Distress Center in 2015, but not as involved in this work. And it's interesting because this was so close to the flood, because a lot of the stuff we analyzed was crisis calls related to weather events. And we haven't really done that since. And we know there's been a number of weather events that have happened since the 2013 floods. So there might be some data projects. Just going to plug that out there. But for those who don't know, Distress Center has been in Calgary for since 1970, focused on crisis and navigation support. And so when we were chosen for the Datathon, it was 50 volunteers that came to analyze over 1.25 million records of calls from our crisis services, our 211 that dated as far back as 2013, 2003. So we looked at 2003 to 2014. And there were a huge long list. It was really interesting to see, and I attended just one of the days of the 3-day datathon to look at how are we gonna, what are we gonna do with all this data that we've been sitting on for years that we have never done anything with. There were a few really cool things that came out of it with 211. For those who don't know, it is for navigation and information referral to connect people with social, government, and community services. And so at that time, we got to do some mapping. And unfortunately, I've asked Geoff if he knows where the map is. I can't find where the map is, but I really want to go back and see the map that we did in 2015 and see how it changes to today. But we were able to map actually needs in the city. And so it really touched on what you were saying around how innovation and technology and data is really our tool at the ground level to tell us what is going on in our community. And so the Datathon really opened up for us all of the work that we've been able to do with data since. One of the really cool things, though, and retrospectively looking at this, is a number of our staff were able to put forward things that they wanted to explore. And at that time, there was a huge myth in our contact center where nobody wanted to work on a full moon. So there was a group in the Datathon that went into that. And what we found is that we could put that myth to rest. There was absolutely no correlation between full moons and the number or severity of crisis calls. So it allowed us to go back and say there was no reason for our staff or volunteers to avoid these shifts, and that they were no more demanding than any other day. And so I think that was one of the really cool pieces of the work too, was taking what were some things that we wanted to bring forward to community that the data was telling us around the state of need and around the state of crisis in our city, but it also as an organization with having a huge number of staff and over 300 volunteers allowed them to get engaged and really be able to ask questions that were coming from the data of the contacts that they took each and every day serving community. And so just want to say a huge thank you to all of the 50 plus people that helped us out with that, because it really has sparked us forward. And again, I am just going to put a selfish, I don't know how to put that plug, that if you are interested in this, we are continually looking at how do we work with our data, and as a nonprofit, I will tell you, our data team is small.
Thanks so much, Robyn. So that proves the point that datathons are fun, right? Like, it's not just all work. We have a really good time at the datathons. So jumping into 2016, a few more meetups, healthcare, looking at data science, using Watson, which is kind of cool. There was an Alberta Open Data Summit in that year, and we were involved with that and had some kind of speakers come from that. And then in the fall, the signature event was with the Calgary Women's Emergency Shelter, which is now called FearIsNotLove. And here, Randy was involved. Randy's with the YWCA, but was highly involved with the Datathon, with the Women's Emergency Shelter, and with some of your own data as well.
Thank you, Geoff. So I'm Randy Thornhill. I'm the Director of Organizational Impact at YW Calgary. And we actually partner very closely with Calgary Women's Emergency Shelter here. I feel a bit inadequate after Robyn talked about how many records did you have? So we had 100,000. But I wanted to say that one of the really important parts of the work that we do is measuring something that we call enduring impact. talked about impact. So when Geoff called me and said, he'd like me to say a few words, the first thing that came to my mind was a recollection of that day, and that struck me because for anyone who knows me, my memory is not my greatest attribute, we'll say. So in thinking about that, though, I realized that there were two things. Certainly, there were some very clear analytical results that were valuable to us and that we've continued to use until today, in fact. But the really powerful thing was the data partnership between the two organizations. We continue to share data today. In fact, we put out a shared report this year. And the experience that we had during the Datathon actually set the groundwork for that, because it was the first time that we actually shared data and came together to analyze it. So, because Geoff said I only had 3 minutes to talk and I have no slides, I just wanted to say thank you for that opportunity and congratulations to Data for Good for 10 impactful years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. 2017 looked at sustainability and data. Did some work with the Bow Valley College. They were actually starting kind of a data program, and we were invited in to just do some brainstorming about what that should look like and some of the topics that should be covered and that sort of thing. We talked about ethics, and we also had the City of Calgary come in and talk about their Department of Data and Analytics, which is amazing, the things that are done at the city with data. And then towards the end of the year, in November, our next Datathon was with the Calgary Foundation. Now, Matt Blough can't be here tonight, but he has graciously provided a video, so let's watch that together.
Good evening. My name is Matt Blough, and I'm the Director of Evaluation and Learning with the Calgary Foundation. When Geoff invited me to this event and mentioned that Data for Good was celebrating 10 years, I couldn't believe how fast time has flown by. I'm not able to be there in person tonight, but I am happy to provide some brief thoughts on Calgary Foundation's Datathon back in 2017 and some of the action items that we've moved forward and where we are today. In late 2017, the Edmonton Community Foundation approached Calgary Foundation with the opportunity to participate in a concurrent Datathon. This would be the first Datathon jointly hosted by more than one community foundation in Canada. At the time, community foundations in Canada did not have a shared method for data collection. One of the great potential outcomes for this event was to find opportunities to align gifts and grant coding to allow for comparative analysis between organizations. The Calgary Foundation worked with Data for Good and the Edmonton Community Foundation to create a list of objectives to be shared between organizations. These objectives included focusing on specific grant data for the organization, Edmonton or Calgary, understanding that data in respect to the city and province, looking at the provincial data as a whole, text analytics of grant applications, and some geospatial analysis of grants in relation to specific areas of the city. There were separate goals set out for each of the objective areas, but the common theme amongst all was how the data gathered could be used to better inform our operations as a grant maker in our respective communities and give us better insight into our operations. In the time leading up to the Datathon, the staff team at Calgary Foundation was confident in our data collection abilities and our growing data analysis processes. The shared objectives with Edmonton Community Foundation outlined a relatively straightforward path for us, and the outcomes would be information that we were kind of on the path to discovering anyway. We thought we knew what the Datathon would be like. We did not. Over 70 volunteers arrived at the U of C for our Datathon. They split into separate teams and dug deep into the data we provided, as well as data from 2on1, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, Stats Canada, and a few other agencies. There were 3 staff members from Calgary Foundation who attended the weekend as well. We were there to help with any insight into grant coding, but mainly we were there, jaws on the floor, as these amazing people discovered insights and connections we had never considered. At the end of the datathon, each of the teams created a presentation on their focus area. A little while later, Calgary Foundation was provided a series of recommendations based on these insights from the weekend. Here are just a few of those recommendations, and I'll just speak briefly on each of them. 1, to develop a new taxonomy. Many times over the course of the weekend, volunteers would ask us why something was coded in this fashion. Did we have a definition of what community development meant or capacity building? The truth at the time was we did not. A lot of the work was based on the feelings and interpretation of the staff member entering the coding. That has changed. Between 2018 and 2020, Calgary Foundation worked alongside Vancouver Foundation and the Edmonton Community Foundation to develop a shared taxonomy with shared definitions for a variety of categories. This new taxonomy was put in place in 2020. It is still a work in progress, but we now have concrete definitions to fall back on when staff are asking, is it grant food security or is it access to food? 2, we are requesting more data about populations. As Calgary Foundation moves down a path of reconciliation and racial equity, we need to know more about the communities we serve and how the support is helping make a difference. For these last 2, we are currently running an evaluation of our community grants program, looking at the design and the intent of its process, as well as gathering feedback from our volunteers and charities about the impact it helps to create in community. This was just a brief summary of the highlights from our datathon back in 2017. Congratulations, Geoff, and congratulations, Data for Good. This is amazing work.
Thank you, Matt. All right, 2018, we're getting closer. So we had a number of meetups. What we do is after the meetup, we always, a couple of months later, or a month or 2 later, we actually all come back together again. And really after we've had time to sit and the organization has time to percolate, we come back and then share again all the results and kind of do a deeper dive and actually a plan of where can we go forward. And that's an important thing, is that the volunteering doesn't stop at the datathon. In many cases, volunteers have continued with the organizations for a substantial amount of time. And then we also implement, if we're building a dashboard or another type of system, we'll help them implement it so it can be used in a sustainable way. We talked about graph database technology. We looked at security and cybercrime. And our next datathon in November was with Calgary Arts Development. And here we have Greg, who's going to share his experiences. Thank you.
It's fun following Matt. It was fun following Matt the year after his datathon. He was talking about grant taxonomy, and just this afternoon we were on a call, an international call with funders trying to explore equity in grant taxonomy, building off of what Matt was doing the year before us at the datathon. I'm from Calgary Arts Development. We're the municipal arts funder. We fund arts organizations, we fund individual artists, we help Calgarians live creative lives. I like to talk about what happened at the datathon, internally, still at work. It still has a lot of impacts. We had artists in residence at the datathon. One of them explored our data, turning numbers into tone size and length. I think 2 people on our team still use that as their ringtones. We have more practical ways that we've used the data since then. In the big picture, we still talk about something Geoff talked about. When we were getting ready for the datathon, we had very specific requests. Can you map this thing that we would like to map? We can't map anything. Could you map this thing? Could you make a bar chart for us? Some of them were stacked bar charts, very complicated for us. Could you do this work for us? And he talked about taking a step back, instead of looking at where fires had been, predicting where's the fire going to be. We were asking the wrong questions. We weren't asking a big enough question. And so still now when we do some of our work, we try to take that step back and ask that bigger question. Some of the work, Matt talked about it too. It was great following Matt by ear. Natural language processing. We had no idea. We get, and it's like diminishing returns here. We have thousands of grant applications. It's not millions, it's not 100,000, but we do have thousands of grant applications. Piles of language, and we review all those, but it's tough to learn from all that. So a natural language processing group explored all that in ways we just couldn't even imagine. We're still using that work. Last year, we did a very similar process internally with our operating grants, our largest program, our $8 million grant program, to use natural language processing to understand the themes and sub-themes coming out of that. This year, we started presenting that to our operating grant clients in our first effort to redesign that program, straight steps, straight from the datathon. We were excited about mapping, and though we asked all the mapping wrong questions, they made many maps for us. One of them was a map of Calgary City Council in their infinite wisdom has tasked CADA recently with tackling public art. So one of the things we mapped is where is public art, which helps us understand where isn't public art in Calgary. We've funded, I think, 30 projects over the last year and a half, specifically in neighborhoods that don't already have access to public art. Last month, we launched a digital billboard campaign, putting public art from the existing collection in digital billboards across Calgary in neighborhoods that don't have access to public art. And last week, on CTV National News, it was the good news story of the day. In the evening news, and they wanted to know, how did you determine this? It's 5 years later, and we're still seeing that return on investment. This summer, I'm sure you're all familiar, you're probably all members. The Canadian Arts Research Network is for the first time having their annual summit outside of Ontario, and they're coming to Calgary, and they're super excited to try and have a datathon. I don't know if they're tired of us. We talk about the datathon a lot, and they think maybe coming to Calgary, doing one here will put it to rest. But they're excited to come and try and replicate this again at a national level. So thanks for putting it together 5 years ago. We're still seeing those returns every day at work.
Thank you, Greg. We're always into datathon, so let's stay in touch for sure. 2019 talked about the future of data for good. Some initiatives in town for open data and data from nonprofits. At that time was the YWCA Data Collective. Stats Canada's treasure trove of data and learning how to use StatsCan data. An organization in town that was young in 2019 but has grown phenomenally is Help Seeker. Check them out. They do use data and AI for all kinds of different social mapping types of purposes. And we did a datathon. There wasn't a lead partner, but it was really around social needs and service providers in Calgary. 2020, well, let me just go back. So what happened at the end of 2019? COVID. So, yeah. So this is an issue, right, for volunteer organizations having in-person meetups and having datathons and wanting to connect and all that sort of thing. So COVID struck, and we were all forced to retreat to our little offices and our 10 by 12 screens. But what we decided to do, though, was to really take up the challenge of providing engagement opportunities in the context of COVID. So we actually, many organizations just sort of stopped or ramped down. We intentionally ramped up our activity in 2020. So I can't go through all of this, but yeah, so virtually every month or even twice a month, we were having a number of datathons. And we did a kind of a small thing, had the drop-in center talk about their data. Wasn't a datathon, but was really interesting and helpful. AI, ML. One of the big things were a whole series of what we called virtual micro datathons. So that's a real mouthful, but what it is we wanted to give you an opportunity to have a datathon experience, but do it virtually in a really short span of time. So the team at Data for Good spun up a number of open data sets, really great data sets, and they were reviewed, they were documented, we had challenges, and those were put up during the meetups. But all of that information, those data sets, all the background is still there if you go back to that event, those events, right? So if you're looking for practice, if you want to actually start using some data, real data, those micro datathons are really cool things to get started with. Yeah, and then a whole bunch of other meetups were happening. 2021, a number of technical things with Python and graph databases, how to analyze surveys data. Really importantly, we started to understand and dig into reconciliation with the data framework, right? So there's something called data sovereignty. And First Nations, Indigenous people are due respect. It's their data, right? And the data sovereignty reflects that. And one of the common themes is nothing about us without us. So that's really important ethically for us to understand that. And there's a framework related to the data sovereignty called OCAP. It stands for ownership, control, access, and possession. If you're not familiar with it, Google it, it's amazing. There's some training, there's lots of documentation. But any work that we do involving Indigenous folks should absolutely be cognizant of OCAP principles. And then 2021, later in that year, we were fortunate to partner with the Calgary Homeless Foundation, but we were still virtual, right? So we actually took our techniques and we did the same sort of thing in partnering, but we did it all virtually on a Saturday. So here to talk about that, we have Sam. There you go.
Need a map just to get down here. So as Geoff mentioned, in 2021, we did a virtual datathon. And we started off from the same position where, here's our question that we want asked, which was, how can you visualize an individual's journey through homelessness? And at this time, we were sort of kicking our own data projects off. Before, we were using a bunch of legacy tools for our reporting, the classic in-app querying. I think we had business objects, which was, 1990s technology rocking up until 2020. And so we were first exploring this data, and I remember the main thing that was coming out of it and the main work was Geoff and his team politely pushing back whenever we sent them data, just asking, what does this mean? And so really what's been a massive impact was we really figured out how are we going to explain what our data is. Our classic, the data governance principle is just good glossaries even. What we had to do as part of this datathon was get that data into actually an understandable state where anyone could hop in and work with it, which also then kind of elevated the caliber of when we did work with our data, how are we going to explain it to folks? When we push our data back into the hands of case managers that are working with numerous individuals experiencing homelessness, now we know how to explain it. We know how to put it into human terms that will enable them to get insights. And I think the datathon was a massive benefit there. The other one was we had, I think, 40 or 50 folks remote at this time, and they were thrust into groups that may or may not have known each other, and so major kudos to them for giving it their all, and we really saw some really cool ways of looking at these journeys. I think there was 10 breakout groups, and so all 10 had a different way of visualizing what this journey and what these flow patterns could look like. And so some of our initial visualizations that we've leveraged just to understand these at scale are owed to those volunteers. And so would just like to say to any of the volunteers that have done this and to Geoff and his whole team, major kudos. It's awesome to see what you guys do day in, day out with everything here. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. 2022, we started I had mentioned before the micro projects. They started the first part there, and so we get people virtually every week, you guys, saying we want to do something, we want to do good, we want to dig into the data, right? And datathons are tough. They're a lot of work and they take many months to do. Data projects as well. They're amazing, but they involve a smaller team. So putting it out to you to actually create your own project, but engage with other volunteers to really get excited about what you can start to do with data. But data with a purpose, right? The data that is related to Calgary, that's working on some really good aspects. So we've had 3 cohorts of these micro projects go through, and looking to continue that later this year. A variety of other meetups. There's actually a book called Bad Data, Measuring Metrics That Matter. We had the author, his name escapes me, but it was really, sorry? Peter Travis. So he came in and talked to us about that. That was really neat. We also got a bit into social innovation and digital technology, responsible AI, and that sort of thing. One of the projects, the partner projects that we worked on was with the Canadian Cultural Mosaic Foundation. And Iman can't be with us this evening, but she too has provided a video for our entertainment value.
Hi everybody, my name is Iman Bukhari and I am a team member with the Canadian Cultural Mosaic Foundation. We are a not-for-profit based in Calgary that works to improve race relations and does anti-racism work. About 6-7 years ago now, we actually started a project which was essentially to quantify incidents of race-related, racism-related reports in the media. And we started collecting that in 2018, and the goal was to collect it until 2022, which we did, and then put a report out kind of talking about that data. In around 2020, we were kind of feeling very confused as an organization that, hey, we're gathering all this data, but we don't know how to visualize it. We don't know how to tell the story better. And that's when we found out about Data for Good, and we spoke to them and we said that we would like to work together. We're so grateful that they were able to work with us because we actually really needed their expertise. We weren't particularly sure in regards to how to handle the data, the best practices and whatnot. So when we joined with the organization, they kind of helped us figure out how to put a better sheet out there, a data sheet out there where we could collect data a certain way. We continuously worked with them for the next 2 years to get this dashboard up, and once the dashboard was done, it was around the same time that we completed our study. We actually put it out. It was a 5-year study really talking about the different types of incidents that were reported and how they actually differed from Statistics Canada data. And that was really important because it's showing that there is a missing link, that we're not collecting data accurately. Since then, we've actually had a lot of success in regards to researchers and organizations who do anti-racism work or anti-hate work, as well as the policing services, look at our data as a way to understand that their data may not be accurate. In particular, York University has been doing a research project that talks about bias in the media in regards to hate crimes and incidents, and they've used our data in addition to their research. As well, we've been working with local politicians, particularly in Alberta, getting this data to the House of Commons, asking them if we are able to revise the way that Statistics Canada actually gathers their data. That's still in the works in regards to working with political entities. It quite takes a lot of time. We certainly would not have been able to complete this project if it was not for Data for Good. So very, very grateful for their help, particularly in regards to sorting out our data and the dashboard, because that's really what made this project a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Oops. 2023, here we're almost there. So, and again, some really interesting meetups, machine intelligence, govlab.ai. That's an opportunity to get involved. It's kind of an internship type of program, taking data science into government. It's kind of cool. We did in the May, we did a datathon with Jumpstart Refugee Talent, organization that they have in Calgary, but they're actually a national organization that works with experienced, trained immigrants and newcomers coming to Canada and really help them to get jobs. A variety of other sort of meetups. Two data projects that we want to dive into that where Data for Good had a bit of a role in. The first is NotInMyCity, which involved human trafficking data and reporting in Alberta. And we have Natalie and Jody who are here to tell us a bit about that. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Muyres. What an incredible amount of accomplishments to see on the screen that leads up to the project that we had the opportunity to work with Data for Good. I am a consultant and a change leader in Calgary here, and I've worked in a lot of technology and data projects, amongst other things. And for 4 years, I had the opportunity to work with an organization called NotInMyCity, who is raising awareness and disrupting human trafficking here in Alberta and across Canada. And one of the projects that I got to work on was called the Alberta Human Trafficking Data Portal Project. What we aim to do is bring together data from law enforcement and the not-for-profit community-serving agencies that were supporting victims and survivors of human trafficking, and bring that data together in a new way to tell a different story, to complete the story about human trafficking and help us understand what the issue was about in the province. Up until then, we only had data from Statistics Canada, sort of official data. And Statistics Canada data, as some of you are all aware and we've already heard, is not necessarily complete. And from a human trafficking perspective, it's not complete because it only represents the incidents reported to police. And so for those of you that work in the social sector, you would probably understand that many of the victims and survivors don't speak to the police about what happens to them, and it takes them a really long time if they do. And so we wanted to look for ways to understand the issue better and more fully and paint a different picture on behalf of the survivors and victims. As project lead, I reached out to Geoff and said, hey, Geoff, how could Data for Good help us with this data challenge? And from there, he introduced me to Jody at PolicyWise, and this dream team came together that we could collaborate on something really quite unique and a first of its kind, I think, that we've been able to find. What Jody and I did is we went out to the community in the province, and we spoke to the law enforcement groups, and we spoke to the not-for-profit community agencies, and we asked them, what are your data needs? What would be your concerns about sharing data? What could it look like if we created this new data solution? And we came up with a really unique set of user design requirements that explained what it is that we wanted to do, and they're comprehensive, and we shared that with Data for Good and the teams that we are working with to design a data portal prototype. That prototype, from what we can tell, because Jody and I have been asked to speak at other conferences, is the first of its kind in North America or beyond that we can see, that we're working from the ground up and talking to the agencies who are helping people on the ground and bring that data to life and telling a story on behalf of the victims and survivors. In fact, we spoke to survivors about what we built. They were the first ones to see what we built and to see how their story was presented in a new and different way. And the feedback was A, very constructive at times, and B, incredibly supportive and thankful that we were telling a different story than what the Statistics Canada data was sharing. So I have to say, from the first moment we met Data for Good, I'll have Jody talk about more of the details of working with Data for Good, but it was easy to see that the volunteers that met us on the phone, the interest that they had, how talented they were, and what was really impressive was what they wanted to learn about the issue first. It wasn't about diving in and asking us what color it should be or what kind of drop-down boxes or what data variables we wanted to focus on. They wanted to understand the issue, and they were doing the learning themselves. And thank you, and I hope I get to meet our volunteers that helped us tonight. This was really impressive. So it just talks about the quality of the work and the thinking that goes into the work you do. Now, I am looking for opportunities to work with you, and I think I've thought of one maybe tonight. The work that you're doing is so important in the community of the not-for-profits. I have spent most of my career in business, and I got to tell you, I take for granted the data that's available to me, the data tools that are available to me, the data experts that are available to me. What you're doing is enabling the kind of decision-making in the community that's changing lives. We've seen that here tonight in just the few examples. So thank you for that. And congratulations on 10 years. I am so grateful I got the opportunity to work with you, and I look forward to the next time. Thank you.
I'll just add a couple of extra notes. Natalie did a great job of explaining the impact that the volunteers had on this project. From PolicyWise's perspective, we got a chance to work really closely with the volunteers in two different capacities. One was to get some advice and some guidance from a broad range of advisors in the volunteer group who gave us some things to think about when we were thinking about how we were going to build the infrastructure underneath the data story that they ended up helping us with. And alongside that was some great advice around data governance, some suggestions around data security and considerations that were incredibly thoughtful, sensitive to the context that we were working with, and ultimately allowed us to really over-deliver beyond what we had initially anticipated. The second thing that they helped us with was the data dashboard. We started this project, as Natalie mentioned, with the problem of a data set, the Statistics Canada data, that we really did not feel was adequate. However, the story would not be complete without that data. And so they were able to put together a fantastic dashboard that is the publicly available piece of our data story. And that dashboard used information that Statistics Canada had, but was not using fully. So I think that there's a really great story to tell in terms of the way that the volunteers are able to see possibilities in data that others might not, and really extend the use of things that are already existing out there in the community. So we're really grateful for the opportunity we've had to work with them, and I'll talk to you again in just a second about the next project that we are working on with them as well.
Great, thanks so much. Our last project to review this evening involves brain injury data portal project. Kind of a recurring theme here, right? And it's been mentioned today, but one of the really important things about Data for Good is that not just using our technical skills, our data skills to help the nonprofit organizations, but it's the reverse, as Natalie had mentioned. How can we as technologists, right, who might be in our silos, really engage and learn more about the nonprofit social organizations, the work that they're doing, and the challenges that they're facing as well. So another example, we have Nora and Jody.
Thanks so much, Geoff. And thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm really thrilled to share our story. And I kind of want to dial it back. Two things, I guess. I wish I could be like 5 or 10 years down the road and be telling the story about where we are right now. Where we are right now is kind of messy because we're still in such the early stages of it. And I'm going to go back 2 years ago when I reached out. I actually started with Arby as their executive director actually 2 years ago next week. And it's been an amazing journey. But my first day on the job, I had a bit of a freak out moment, if I could say that, because I sat down at my desk and in front of me was a 2014 desktop computer and a 2011 monitor, which I didn't know that until I got the new laptop because none of this stuff worked in a virtual world that we were in. trying to do Zoom meetings. Teams was incredibly unfriendly, and I couldn't even get the basics of my job done. And add to that, I had no database. I had an abundance of Excel spreadsheets developed by people that didn't know how to use Excel. Sorry, I'm kind of putting some dirty laundry out there. But this became the new reality, and I really relate to what Natalie was saying because I came from working with organizations that had incredible resources and IT teams, and and I didn't have any of that, nothing. And I'm like, man, how do I make any decisions to lead this organization? And so go forward about 2 or 3 months, I'm like, this doesn't work. And I reached out to Geoff in the very beginning and just kind of like, I'm in a bit of a mess and I need some help out of this. And then I very quickly learned not long after that, I wasn't the only one. And there are 3 specific brain injury serving organizations in Alberta, and then there's 9 others that are disability serving organizations that serve in this space across the province. So 12 organizations, all grappling with some of the same problems. Some of them are larger and have resources, some are smaller than us and they're in more challenges than I have. And I thought, we can't solve these problems alone. We need to look at this as a collaborative approach. And so through conversations and moving forward, and Geoff introduced me to Jody and said, hey, have you heard about PolicyWise and their nonprofit data strategy that has been created? And so that began a conversation. And then we moved forward from that. And I don't know where the clicker is, Geoff. Can you move me forward 1 slide? Because I put some highlights that I didn't want to talk to, but just kind of some basic information about what we've been doing. And so thankful to a fantastic funder through the Rotary Club, as well as a donor. We were able to upgrade every single computer in the office within about 6 months of when I started. And so it's like, okay, we got a fresh slate. We've rolled out teams. There's all sorts of things that we've been doing. But this data issue for the whole brain injury sector in Alberta, I'll share with you one thing. Across Canada, there are provincial brain injury associations in every province except for New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and Alberta. And that doesn't make sense to me, given our population and given the need in our community. And I can't even tell you entirely what the need in our community is, because I don't have the data to show it. The data I can show you is the 1,600 clients annually that we serve under a contract with the Alberta government. But I'm looking at all of the people that aren't even eligible for services under those contracts because of all sorts of limitations. And so there's this hidden issue. Within the broad spectrum of disability services, brain injury services make up about 2% of disability. And it often is overlooked in funding by our own funders, that they give increases to disability services, but go, oh, the Alberta Brain Injury Initiative actually doesn't fall under that, so no, you're not getting the 10% increase that the others got. You're still stuck in 2014. We're stuck at the 2014 funding rates, have not changed, and that's not changing this year either. So we have to look at ways that we can get creative and do some work. And so thankful to a funding project that we put forward to the Community Services Recovery Fund to bring together this data project of collectively as organizations with all of our many Excel spreadsheets. How do we share this so that we can understand better the issues and challenges that individuals and families are facing? Because brain injury doesn't just happen to one person. When that happens, it happens to the entire family. Whether it is an 18-year-old who has experienced a stroke, it happens, or the college student that is hit by a drunk driver on their way to work and their family is now adjusting to providing services for life, or it could be your parent, your spouse, your brother, your sister. It is anybody. We see miracles at the work that I do, and it is the most inspiring place I've ever worked, but I need to be able to have data to tell the right decisions or make the right decisions. We do a lot of storytelling, and I'm all for storytelling. I think it's really important. My first degree was in communications. My second degree was an MBA. I want to tell stories, but with good data so that we can actually have some impact. Happy to say that the work with PolicyWise and their support has been incredible. Also happy to say that I've hired 2 project staff on contract for a year to support this project, both of them that had connection to Data for Good. One that was actually a volunteer on the human trafficking data portal, and another one who was a regular attendee at the Data for Good function. So just great connection that came through for all of that. Jody, I want to turn it over to you for any kind of comments you want to add to that.
The last thing I'll say, for my time on the stage today, is just to note that this idea of data collaboration is something that I think reflects the maturity of Calgary as a city and where our social networks are getting to. And it wouldn't really be possible to have that kind of data collaboration without a group like Data for Good, providing some of that support, making some connections between experiences that they've had on different projects, bringing diverse thinking, diverse ideas to bear on these problems. And that's the kind of thing that I get really excited about. I think this room is a group of kindred spirits. You were seeing that, again, possible with this new project that is just getting underway. We're seeing opportunities for us to engage those volunteers because we know how much impact they have, the kind of approach that volunteers have taken to really be sensitive to the issues, to understand, seek that understanding for themselves so that they can help others to understand the issues and the solutions that might be possible. So thank you for the support that you have all given me. Thank you to Geoff for making connections because each of us is a data point that deserves to be connected to other data points. That's really some magic that happens with this group.
Thank you. Okay, before I look forward, I just want to sort of stop and just kind of do the thank yous now, and I could go on for half an hour, so I'm not going to name individuals, right? But I think I just want to recognize all of the volunteers that have provided your talents to Data for Good over the years. I want to thank the core team. Some of the members of the core team are here this evening. They have a sticker. I'm not sure what color it is on their name tags. But the core team over the years, it's evolved a little bit, but some have been with us for a long time. Make this happen, right? This doesn't happen alone, right? It happens with collaboration in a team. So I just want to thank everybody for the 10 years. So looking forward, the future is bright. We have amazing growth in Data for Good. Every week there's new folks that are wanting to join. It's fantastic. The energy of the folks that want to do good in their community. The social nonprofit organizations continue to have a critical role, and not just continue, but that role is expanding, right? We rely so heavily on that sector, but it's not recognized, it's not rewarded, it's not funded appropriately. So they're being asked to do more with less, and it's tragic, but it's kind of the way it is right now. So what can we do about it? Well, we can help, right? We can use our talents, we can use our skills to get in there, dive in, and do some of the things that they don't have the time to do, or the capacity, or the resources to do, okay? So that's where we fit in. The emerging technology, regardless of whether it's advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of that stuff is great and provides huge opportunities for us. But it also provides many risks, right? And we're seeing a lot of that today, right? It's what Terry was referring to. It's the data for bad. It's folks that are essentially stealing our data, using it for purposes we have no control over, for purposes that we just can't decide, right? So we have to engage. We have to try to make a difference, and we can start to do that. Data ethics and awareness of equity, diversity, inclusion is so important, right? I mean, just look around us here, right? The diversity we have in this room, we need to step into that and bring in more folks that come from underrepresented communities, right? Because the voices are absolutely critical. And the knowledge and the experience that folks can bring we have no idea of the ideas that will come forward if we start to include more people in what we're actually doing. And then finally, for Data for Good to have more impact, we have to grow as well. We have to build our capacity. We need more partnerships. We want more nonprofits to step forward, to reach out, for the teams to help out, collaborations across the scene. We're working on a number of different aspects of that right now. So the future is bright. So concluding here, I just want to thank the YWCA Data Society for sponsorship of this evening. The Data Society, if you're not aware, you can use that QR code and go to ywcdata.ca. This came together a number of years ago. We had like 8 or 10 different data meetups that were out there doing their own thing. But we were stepping over each other and having meetups on the same evening and stuff. So we all got together. We created a calendar so we would know which night we would have our meetups. But it grew to much more than that, a huge collaboration between the data community. And one of the results of that is the YWCA Data Conference. So we're going into, what is it, year 3? Myrna, are you here somewhere? 4? We're going into year 4 of the YWCA Data Conference. It's amazing. It's the only real data conference in Calgary. And it's done by a volunteer group through the YWCA Data Society. There's newsletters that provide great information on the community, partially run the artificial intelligence meetup. There's a community support fund that's used for data groups that need a little bit of funding. And we're also working on something called the Community Data Hub to build a repository of data that's not available right now. There's no place for nonprofits to put data, and for other community organizations, and a place where you can then use it, right, with your talents and your skills. So now it's time for the celebration, for some fun.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to interrupt and take 2 minutes before Geoff sends you on to the celebration, but I do have to take 2 minutes of your time really quick. So my name is David. I'm one of the co-leads that Geoff just alluded to really quickly. And you might have noticed here throughout the celebration, as we think back on 10 years, there's one common theme that really runs through it, and one common driver that has really made this all possible, right? And that really common theme and driver is Geoff right here, right? And so So you can see I'm not on the program because, of course, we couldn't let Geoff know about this beforehand. But really, you might have noticed from the very first meetup in 2013, he was up there presenting throughout all the datathons over the years, and right through to tonight, right? He's emceeing the event, and really, that's just scratching the surface. Data for Good. Geoff has done so much for the data community, and really well beyond that as well. Too many organizations and initiatives that he's involved in for me to really list. Someone called him a serial social philanthropreneur. I don't even know if that makes any sense, but I feel like it captures, someone really tried to capture how involved Geoff is in the community and how tireless of a driver he's been for everyone. And so others on the core team, of course, recognizes as well as the national team. And Joy Robson, the co-founder of the National Data for Good group, actually wanted to be here tonight, but because of flight delays and things like that, she unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. But she did send us a message that I wanted to share with Geoff here.
Well, hello, Calgary. As David will be able to tell you, I almost made it there to celebrate with you all tonight. My original flight was leaving Toronto at 2:50 p.m., arriving at 5:30 p.m. Calgary time. However, that flight got delayed 7 hours. And even after a comical attempt to find another suitable flight out, a la The Amazing Race, it simply wasn't in the cards. So I am sad not to be there with you all to celebrate 10 amazing years of Data for Good in Calgary, and instead must settle for sending this video message to show you, Geoff, what was arriving tonight. that was supposed to arrive in person. And instead, it will be shipped to you very soon. It's a gesture of our appreciation nationally for all that you have done to not only champion the chapters in Alberta, but also to support the growth and the development of the Data for Good organization throughout Canada. We're really grateful and proud of all your achievements. So cheers to enjoying your next cup of coffee and note-taking. Look, there's a pen as well. And activities and on us. So all the best until next time, and enjoy your night, everybody.
Let's just pause once more before Geoff sends us over there to really thank Geoff for all the hard work and everything you've done. And we do have a small token of appreciation here for you, Geoff. Right. So the mug will come later. But that's
all right, thanks so much. All right, let's move on to the fun stuff. We have refreshments down in the West Hall. There's lots of folks here, but if you want to move around a bit, there is kind of an East Hall here as well, and there's the upstairs here as well. We have 2 tables set up. So one is for volunteers. If you're new to Data for Good or you haven't signed up yet, if you want to express your interest in projects, then kind of go to that volunteer table. The other is for partners. So as I said, we're always looking for new nonprofit social organizations. So some might be here this evening, but more likely, you might be volunteering with an organization that needs some help. So we need to know the name of that organization. We need to get a contact, and then we can kind of reach out and try to create a new project, right? Or have a datathon or something, something like that. If you have not done so, please register at the front desk. Let us know that you've been here. That's really good for our data. We want to have a complete data set, right? Data quality issues don't be the cause of data quality issues. And have a good time. Our next meetup is Thursday, February 22nd.